Hey guys, I want to tell a story this morning of um, me being completely broken, and then recently starting to break through that um, and being given a chance again. This is a story of hope because I didn't think I'd ever be making this video. I didn't ever think I would be in a place that I'd have a second chance to have a whole family. And towards the end of this video, I'll share how hope has really broken through in this situation. And it's not something I can really take credit for. I hope this video is more confession than explanation, and definitely more confession than justification. There's this proverb I think about a lot. I've been doing a study in the Proverbs in the past 8 weeks or so, and I think it's from Proverbs 30. And I'm paraphrasing, but it says, "Better is he who can master his anger than the mighty." And he who can rule his own heart than he who takes a city. And this is a story of me not ruling my heart. But it's also a story of me being given a second chance and starting to walk into new wholeness. 2 years ago, in the summer, I was kind of at what you might call like a peak in my life. We'd had some hard experiences as a family, but in many ways we were doing really well. And then we were kind of blindsided by an experience with the birth of our twins. And we're just knocked down. I can only blame myself though for what happened to me, because looking back at it, I prioritized everything except for taking care of my own mind and heart. And in retrospect, I was operating in a zone that I wasn't ready for. I wasn't operating out of a foundation of mental and spiritual wellness. And I had a lot of healing then that I needed to do in my heart that I wasn't prioritizing. Our YouTube channel was doing really well. We were super excited about having these twins. And then the twins ended up in the NICU for months. And it was one of the most stressful experiences of our life. It was just daily fear and anxiety and pressure. And I held it together through that, and I do feel like I held things together for our family during that time. But even in the midst of that, I knew that I wasn't taking care of my own mind in a way that would make that effort sustainable. And looking back at it, I should have been, when we got home from the hospital with our babies, and we were honestly traumatized. I should have been pouring my whole effort into recovery and stability for our family, and prioritizing that above everything else. But what and I also should have seen the warning signs in me and done whatever it took to be okay in that time, but I just fell apart. And the result of me falling apart was me experiencing a lot of fear and anxiety, which translated into treating my wife, Brianna, in a way that she shouldn't ever have to accept anyone treating her. Being really angry at small things. Just really regressing in many ways to a place that I hadn't been for years with anger. I used to be a super angry person, and I really regressed a lot in that time. And I was not a good partner in that time. And the result of that, rightly, was that she said, you cannot stay here and act like this. You cannot act like this, treat us this way. And I need space from you. And I completely, looking back at it, see that was the right thing for her to say. She basically said, you need to do whatever it takes for you to be able to be a good husband and father and take care of yourself. At that point, I moved out of the house we were living in into the camper we had down the hill, and I just checked out. And that's my confession today, is I checked out in a way that I never thought that I would. I never thought I would be in that place. And I had looked at many people before with scorn who did that type of thing. You know, thought I'd never be in that position. And during that time, I was dealing with an experience of what I realized was an episode of depression and a lot of anxiety on top of that. And I just was like incapacitated. I've never experienced anything like that. And it hasn't ever been that bad since then. I spent a month basically in bed and didn't feel like I could even face the world at all. I stopped working, and I started the beginning of drinking too much alcohol. And I look at that time and think about it from, there's two things. One of them is I did experience like a serious mental health crisis. And it wasn't, I can look at that time with some compassion for myself, because the series of events that happened over those months before with the babies in the NICU, like that was a period of extreme stress. And whenever a clinician is diagnosing someone with depression, one of the big questions they ask you is, hey, have you had any traumatic events or major life changes in the past year or two? And the answer for me was yes. And so while I did experience a mental health crisis that in some ways was out of my control, there's a parallel truth that I didn't do what it took in the months preceding that to take care of myself to prevent getting in that place. And then also, once I was in that place, I got stuck. And everything just piled up. Financially, I wasn't working, out of money. Stress just piled on stress. And I got stuck in a place of not even feeling like I could get out at all. And that's where, even though I had something that I feel like wasn't my fault, in that context, I abandoned my family, completely abandoned my family. The other aspect to this is that I didn't do what could have softened the edges for my wife, Brianna. I didn't bring her along and tell her what was going on. I got sucked. I just surrendered to isolation. And that's my biggest regret, and what made it impossible for that to just be this short episode, which we recovered from, which is I cut her off in my shame, the shame of that situation. And I did everything except take responsibility in that time. My thinking was so twisted in that time. I came up with every excuse to blame the situation, to blame her, because we'd had a lot of conflict in those preceding months, but to blame her for where I was at and how I was treating her. And I treated her terribly, like in ways I never thought that I would again. I told you years ago I had just huge issues with anger, breaking stuff all the time. This was 10 years ago. And I haven't been like that for years. But I let myself get back to a place of just extreme anger and blame, doing anything but taking responsibility. instead of facing the pain inside myself, I hid from the pain. One of the big ways that I did that was through drinking. And I've come to see that when you read in the scriptures, God values truth. And for us, I believe he values truth because he wants us to live in reality. In this situation, instead of experiencing that extreme pain inside myself at what I'd done to our family, at losing everything, I covered that pain. So my view of addiction is just that anything that makes your reality seem better than it really is, it's a lie. It's a lie, is what it is. Alcohol is a lie. It's just pure evil. It's like leprosy. Because with leprosy, you get this infection and it numbs you to pain. And your fingers and your hands lose sensation. So you don't experience the pain of harmful things. And the result of that is that you continue to do things that harm you. You'll touch a hot stove and you don't even know it. And the result of that is severe damage and loss of fingers, loss of toes. And that's what alcohol is for me. So the past 2 years for me has been a very dark time. And even when I got to the point where I was having a lot of conviction over what I had done, I was still stuck drinking. And I was still stuck with a lot of blame and anger. And those two things really kept me in this stuck place because I started working again. I started doing renovation and construction work. But I was still stuck in a place of darkness and depression and not having the clarity of mind, not having the full conviction to see the changes that I need to make. And I did not know how to get out of it. My mind was a mess. It still is, honestly, to a certain extent. Like, I don't have the clarity that I had, say, 3 years ago in my mind. But I do have a lot of clarity, and there was a turning point about 3 months ago. I'd been going to counseling for a big portion of this time and trying to make a path forward, but never seeing how I could right the wrongs. The turning point honestly came through brokenness, because through this whole thing, the biggest pain and conviction in my heart has been just what I destroyed. And seeing the impact on my kids. Like, I'm doing this thing to my kids that will cause permanent harm in their hearts and frame the way they view the world, frame the way they view relationship. I'm not there for my kids. Even when I started taking the kids every weekend, which has been, I can't tell you how long, but it's been many, many, many months, I still am not there for my kids in their daily life. And I've destroyed this dream that Brianna and I had, and I've crushed her heart. I came to a place of just total brokenness where I realized, like, I am losing this, and I'm losing it permanently, and there wasn't a shred of delusional thinking that I could just get it back or that I had a plan that would help me get it back. And it was about 3 and 4 months ago that I just was broken. And I was broken over drinking because I saw it for what it was. I actually stopped drinking for like a week and had this week of clarity, just extremely painful clarity. And I, at that point, was somewhat dismissive of how big of an issue my drinking was. And yet when I stopped, the pain was so intense. Seeing what I'd done and having evenings just sitting alone at the camper, nothing to do. I'll get on the phone and talk to a friend, but I can't just get out of my head like what I've done, what I've destroyed. And then, just thinking, oh, it's not a big deal. I quit easy. I can have one drink tonight. And I was back to drinking again, and drinking harder than I'd ever drank in my life. And that was a huge convicting moment with alcohol. From that point on, I knew every day, like, this is out of control, because it's proof to me that, like, this is out of hand, that I'm seeing so clearly this is harming me, and this is keeping me from having the clarity of mind that I need. And yet I keep doing it. It's keeping me from making the decisions I need to make to benefit my family and even take a step in the right direction. And yet I'm still choosing it. So it was several weeks of drinking, but every single day just knowing, like, this is the wrong thing. And it was progressive too. It was completely out of control. And then a few things happened, but I quit again, and I've been quit for several months now. And that's been the best thing ever. That was a turning point. And when you go from covering your pain every day and having a lot that you've just buried for almost 2 years now, to experiencing that 24/7, during that period, I was just broken. I would just cry, like, throughout every day. And honestly, it was out of that place that I came to Brianna in true humility for the first time and asked her to give me another chance. And I honestly didn't expect her to want me to. She didn't have reason to trust that like this would be real. And she's done so amazingly in the context of me just checking out. She's taken care of our kids when I haven't. She's given them a home and a lovely home life and taking care of them when I just was gone. And I just dropped that on her. I didn't expect her to say, sure, I'll give you another chance. But something in her heart, I think, heard that humility and brokenness. And that was a turning point. The turning point was me being humbled. And the result of me being humbled was a few things, but one of them was just listening to her hurt. Because what I'd done in my delusional blame was when she would come to me and tell me something so true that I had done from the past 2 years, like, you've abandoned me, like, how could you do this? I would answer that with some twisted thing in my head that would turn it back to her, which completely sabotaged her and I making any connection at all. I am honestly really blown away with where we're at this moment. And it's honestly a miracle. Because I didn't have the capital. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the strength to make this happen. But what God gave me was the realization that I could take what I did have, which is very, very little to give, and give that. And the result is what I feel like is just completely undeserved mercy in this situation, in the form of Brianna opening her heart and us slowly taking step by step into reconnection and wholeness. And it's amazing, honestly. This is not something that I made happen. I mean, I can identify some of the things I did, but in my humility, I realized like I had to change my actions. I had to change my actions, or the end was inevitable and destructive. So I did change some things in how I interact with her, but the payback is, I feel like, is just so many times what that small effort is worth. I'm really amazed. Because I have squandered resources. I have broken hearts. I have hurt my children. I've hurt my wife. I've let a ton of people down outside of my family. I have not followed through on my promises, even to people on YouTube, online. That stuff I want to rebuild, And I'm starting with just like the most basic, which is the path forward to fully support my family financially so that I can take the pressure off Brianna so she can be a mom. We're not jumping into moving back in together tomorrow. We're trying to take wise steps to becoming a family again. I have a lot of apologies to speak and amends to make. And that will be a process. I want to show some of this process online on YouTube because, well, there's two reasons. The first one is I want to support my family financially. So I want to be involved in making videos and helping take some of the burden off Brianna in that. And eventually, hopefully, taking all the burden off her. And in order to do that, I feel like I need to tell some of the story. I can't just show up and, make some obsessive project video out of the blue. But I also want to tell the story because we started YouTube as a business. Like, let's do this to support our family. And that worked through a lot of hard work. But then what God gave us through it was this new vision of like, there's something to actually telling a story in truth. And we've tried to be honest and open. We never shared everything, but we've tried to be truthful in what we did share. And it has impacted people's lives. And I feel like this story of healing, if anything can impact people, it's going to be this story that God is doing in our lives right now. So that's why I want to share this stuff. So I'm back. I'm really grateful. This video is just a disordered start at telling this story from my perspective. Thank you guys for your support of Brianna and the kids through all of this. I'm just really grateful and actually full of hope for the first time in a long time. Because I had so many days and weeks and months and years of wallowing in hopelessness. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. And see you again soon. Bye-bye.